I will ask you, is Cam Newton proving that the Patriots made the right decision moving on from Tom Brady?
Yeah, I didn't think I'd be saying this, and obviously I was the most skeptical of anybody in terms of how this would work with Cam and Bill and Cam and the Patriot way and being able to adapt to that system. But they absolutely made the right decision. And it's cost them.
Yes, coach.
Well, when you look at it collectively, not only is it the right decision, but it cost them $500,000 guaranteed, and it cost Tampa Bay $50 million guaranteed. And what that alone is staggering. But then what they've been able to do with them is impressive as well. And I think the biggest point here is not just the player, but the way they're using the player. They are catering the offense to what Cam does really well, and that has produced significant dividends. And you got to give Josh McDaniels a ton of credit. You know, he had Tim Tebow in Denver, so he has a background in using a player. Look, I'm not comparing Cam to Tim Tebow, but a player with a skill set that has some similarities. So they were able to jump into the season with the right approach. And then in Tampa Bay, it's been, we need to fuse our systems. Tom Brady should be doing what Tom Brady does best. He's not an elite athlete. He wins with his mind. And when you have him thinking about hots and sight adjusts and how the offense should work, it slows down his greatest asset. So I think the way they use the players is as important as what the players have contributed to the team.
This is a ridiculous discussion. I mean, we're talking about this as if they traded for Cam Newton. Like, they didn't trade for Cam Newton. Think about what happened, guys. Like, Cam Newton was on the street for the entire pandemic. No team called. No team offered him anything. They got Cam for $1 million. So we're talking as if this was the master plan. Look, let's move on from Tom Brady. Cam Newton's going to be out on the streets. Everybody's going to pass on Cam Newton. We're going to wait. We're going to wait to the very last minute. Then we're going to offer him league minimum. And then it's going to work out great. And he's going to be healthy. No, this was to me was a bad decision. And now it's turned out to be a good bet for them. I think that 100% it's a good bet for them. The 100%. Cam Newton was sitting on the street. Who are you going to go to? Stidham? Like, was that the answer? Was that really the answer? I know that was the storyline throughout the offseason, but was Stidham really the answer? This was not the Green Bay Packers where they had Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers sitting on the sideline. This is a terrible discussion. I think Cam Newton is healthy. I think he's in a perfect situation. I think the Patriots are going to have a great season, but you can't take away from what Tom has delivered. When you have a all-time great quarterback, to me, there's only there's a handful of guys, the Tom Brady's of the world, they write their own ticket out of the city.
Well, that part I think Coach, is really interesting. And I want your insight on this, which is forget the just X's and O's football side of it and how the Patriots can best be positioned to succeed this year. What Brandon is communicating is not just, I think it is a player's perspective, but it's also how I think a lot of football fans felt, which is Tom Brady gets to tell you when he's done. If anyone has earned that right, it's the winningest, most accomplished, best player, not just in your franchise's history, but arguably in the history of the entire sport. But for good or for bad, Coach, and tell me if I'm wrong, that is what makes Belichick, is that part of his brain is just disconnected. It doesn't exist. The emotional connection of, well, it might not be for the best, but do I want to be the guy who tells Brady, get out? Maybe Tom's got something left. Do I want to risk the fact? I don't think it's a good bet, but it's a safe bet. Like, it seems to me like a lot of coaches and franchises would have done exactly what Brandon's talking about, particularly when the owner was on the record saying he wants Tom Brady to play his last game with the Patriots. But part of what makes Bill, aside from his horrific choice of sweatshirts, is the fact that he can detach himself emotionally from this, right? Like, And that's been the case with him, for your entire career with him, correct?
You're absolutely correct. And when you look at it, he's always moved on from players early. And that's one of his absolute greatest strengths is his ability to disconnect from the emotional decision making that goes into it and look at it from a strategic standpoint. And he's moved on from a ton of players. He traded Drew Bledsoe within the division, and Bledsoe had a $100 million contract 2 years before. He traded Mike Vrabel. He got rid of Richard Seymour. He moved on from Ty Law. I mean, you can go down the list of cut Lawyer Malloy, and Lawyer goes to Buffalo. So it's ongoing, and at this point, you could argue that Bill has earned the right to do that as the greatest head coach of all time, just as Tom's has earned some rights as well. The other greatest asset that Bill has is his ability to bring players in that are on the scrap heap or that other people don't want, and then not look at it and say, okay, what can't he do? But look at it and say, okay, what can he do? Now, that being said, the player has to be willing to do what the Patriots ask him to do. And Cam running the ball 17 times in his first game, to me, is an example of doing what the team wants him to do, coming off an injury. It's not great for Cam's longevity, but it's what was needed to be done to make this marriage work.
Coach, you still think that the Patriots are running Cam too much, that means?
No, that's not what I'm saying at all. I think actually this past game, they did a much better job of not putting in as many of those positions. And I think what you'll see, and this happens a lot of times with high value quarterbacks who have the ability to run, is they'll start using that more or primarily in the red zone, on third down, and in 2 minute. So you use that asset in those critical situations as opposed to using the quarterback-driven runs on 1st and 10 from the minus 20. But this is also a learning curve for them as well. And I thought Cam threw the ball really well against Seattle.
Yeah, he did.
So 1 point and then one question for Brandon. The point on the running that Coach, I think, alluded to when he said, running the ball 15 some odd times in game one is not great for Cam's longevity, is I know Cam just gave this interview and did everything other than send a screenshot of his bank balance reminding them he's rich as hell. But I'm sure he'd like to have one more really big contract. And when you're playing for $1 million and in game one that, you are used like a rental car, that the team doesn't have to worry about the mileage or the dents or the tires. Some guys, I think, would push back on that. And I think that's the point Coach was alluding to. But to Brandon, to your point on the Patriots got lucky, is it at all plausible to you that this was a card the Patriots were always going to play, that they had communicated with Cam's agent, if you have an offer, call us? Like, if Chicago does call you and offer you $10 million, make sure you call us before you sign, and that they were willing to potentially pay more than they ended up having to. But when nobody called Cam, the agent calls and says, listen, we've got no other offers, so what is yours? And that's why they got him for this money, because it felt to me like this was always how it was going to end up. Cam with the Patriots, I didn't think it was going to be for $1 million, but does that change at all? Like, do you think that's plausible, that this was always kind of their plan and they just got him cheaply? Coach is shaking his head. But Brandon, your take.
Yeah, I mean, I think when all this blew up, everyone said, well, this looks like it has Cam Newton all over it, right? But then he went on a podcast with Odell Beckham Jr. and a few other guys. I think it was Todd Gurley. And he talked about his process and how angry he was. Nobody was calling. And when his agent finally called and said, we have a team, and he said it was the Patriots, and he was like, oh, my goodness, are you serious? So, yes, like everybody thought that. But the truth is, no, the Patriots didn't call. They were sitting in the back lurking. Maybe they called at the beginning, but they didn't come in with a strong offer. Cam told us exactly how his process played out. Yes, the Patriots got lucky. I don't think the Patriots went into this offseason or going into the season thinking like, hey, we're going to go win another Super Bowl. I really believe that they felt like, look, if we can find someone great, if not, it's a rebuilt year. Let's see what this kid Stidham does. But Cam Newton was sitting there patiently waiting, and they got him for $1 million. This was a bad decision to me to move away from Tom Brady because he's an all-time great that can still play with the right pieces around him, but it's turning to be a really good bet for the Patriots.
Yeah, I think, Brandon, you're absolutely right. I didn't agree with the decision to move on from Tom Brady, and they got lucky with Cam Newton. The fact that he signed for $500,000 guaranteed is incredible, but it tells you there wasn't a market. So they got lucky with that aspect. Otherwise, they would have been working from a totally different framework and
with the javelin
starting point.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from First Things First, or go watch a few segments from our other shows on FS1.